Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining the Great Dynamics podcast. I'm your host, Ahmed Hassan, and today we're doing something a little bit different. We've done it before. We're going to talk about your favorite subject, Call of Duty. And this time we're talking about Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 2022. And we're going to do that, as always, with Marcel Plichta and Michael Elmer, both team members in Great Dynamics. And hey, guys, let's get into it.
How's it going? I
Good.
gotta thank Michael again for dragging himself out of bed.
Always. It's a good excuse to light the candle.
This is truly an international effort. 3 different countries we're in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, daylight savings time almost foiled us, but we persevered through me checking my phone. All right, so Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 2022. So the second Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. This is, I think, the first of these games that I hadn't played before, like separate to the podcast. Have you guys played this one?
I did just for this.
Oh yeah,
I didn't.
Well,
I tried to be neutral as always.
That's yeah. It's more shocking that way. I think Michael's pre-shocked at some of the stuff that happens in this one.
Yeah, I've always heard about the campaign. You know, obviously, like I know most people play for multiplayer, but I've heard like, oh yeah, it wasn't too bad. You know, it wasn't like other ones.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird because the one after this that we'll probably get to later, Modern Warfare 3, got like panned for being like too short and stuff that. So this one's but I think, I don't know, the issues that, I mean, I don't have any issues with it as a campaign, like as a game it's fine enough, but like plot wise it's not any less crazy, I think, than what we'll probably see in the next game.
Right.
Like I looked up some interviews with the developers, like as part of the, like, you know, hype for when this game was coming out. And they were really like, you know, the last game they were talking about gray zone tactics and like, this is the state of modern warfare now, like how they were getting really serious and stuff. But in this one, they were more like, oh, well, the important thing about Call of Duty is the characters, is the people. And so like as unrealistic as the last game
What does that even mean?
I don't know. I think they want it to be like the Avengers, where it's like you've got you know, Captain Price instead of Captain America, and you've got like Scottish Man instead of Iron Man. But but like, so as unrealistic as the last game was, like they really take a nosedive here. Like they're talking about like, oh, we want you to question who the good guys really are, but like basically the bad guys are the bad guys and the good guys are the good guys. And like more than any of these other games, like every single mission in this game is like an international incident. Like it would genuinely be like an international crisis if this kind of thing happened. And you know, if we recall two games ago, like Washington DC got nuked. So we're really going off the rails here. But yeah,
well,
so
not to point to, sorry to interrupt you, Marcel, but there was this the theater terrorist attack yesterday. And a lot of people were pointing to the one of the missions of Call of Duty that we talked about.
Is it like from this game or from one from
the no Russian mission?
Oh, yeah. It's well, it's also because it kind of, I don't know, the discourse on social media about that attack was instantly like muddled, right? Because you had, you know, a lot of this is actually a good lesson in sort of open source intelligence and intelligence analysis generally, which is, you know, you kind of have to have no opinion on something like the day after it happens, especially for something as massive as that, because like you don't, like, really all you have are your assumptions and sort of your judgments that were existing beforehand. You kind of need to wait for more data to come in. I realize.
How do I get clicks then?
I realize that on Twitter, that's like shouting
point.
at like a train from the platform, being like, "Hey guys, listen to me."
Yeah.
But it is you know, it is a good lesson just for yourself, just for, you know, oneself, right? To you know, because you know, the second that I saw that attack happened, I had 800 different theories, but you know, until we have But yeah, no. Fortunately, the topic of this game doesn't touch too closely on topics like that, on that particular set of like of terrorist attacks. So hopefully, hopefully, people with sensitivities about those sorts of issues, that's not necessarily something to be worried about in this particular game.
I was gonna say, of all the theories that came into my head, for some reason the first thing that came to my head was like the opening of that Christopher Nolan film Tenet, because it's in like a Russian concert hall, and I was like,
oh yeah,
did you see that? Or am I
okay?
Okay,
I love that movie.
I like it, but I'm
I was
too
like,
dumb
this is
for
wild.
it.
It takes a few watches.
I just pretend that I know what I'm talking about.
You gotta research. It's like a self-study.
Yeah, but by the time that movie ended, I was like, yep, I'm just gonna say that made sense to me. And well, it's all backwards.
That movie has one sentence that I will love forever, and it's when they say, "Oh, they did a temporal pincer movement." Yes.
Yes.
That's That's gonna be in the Journal of Strategic Study soon. Temporal pincer movements and options for the U.S. military. The U.S. military. But yeah, moving into this game, which has significantly fewer temporal pincer movements. Right. So if we recall, at the end of the last game and the last podcast, which this was a while ago, right, the sort of main tension of that game gets resolved, and it ends with Captain Price, our hero, our Avengers team leader, and Laswell, who is the CIA station chief of the country the last game took place in. They sit down at a cafe together, and he tells her that he's forming something called Task Force 141, and they don't give any details about what this task force actually is, or what they do, or what authority, like who the task force belongs to. It's mostly just an excuse to reintroduce fan favorite characters, right? So characters like Soap, characters like Ghost, and characters like General Shepard, who were in the previous iteration of Call of Duty. They're all just here now, and mostly the same, except for General Shepard, who's like bald and kind of overweight now. Like they changed him from like a Mattis kind of figure to like a DoD bureaucrat looking guy. So change your conception of General Shepard from like a cool guy with a mustache and a cigar to like a dweeb basically. And the first mission, right, starts in a country called the United Republic of Adal, which is one of the Caucasus countries that borders Urzikstan. It's a fake country, obviously, that borders Urzikstan, which is where the last game took place. So we're in the same region, but it's another fake country, and it's also another country where they speak Arabic for no real discernible reason, despite being a Caucasus republic.
That makes sense.
And it becomes very clear that these countries are just supposed to be like Iraq, more or less, is sort of the thing. They want to set it in Iraq or Syria, but they can't set it in Iraq or Syria, so they've sort of invented a country to do it, even though it makes no sense geographically. But this mission, you play as Ghost. Ghost was a character in the last Modern Warfare 2, and he was kind of in that game. He was kind of just a guy. He had a balaclava on, and the balaclava had a skull. So at the time, a lot of people thought that was a cool character design. So Ghost has been enduring for that reason, because he looked cool. And in this game, he's kind of a weirdo. Like he's like the kind of guy who's like, I only like to work alone, and I only like to work with knives. He's like basically Batman. He's he's very broody.
Nobody cared until I put on the mask.
Yeah, literally. Exactly. He's this is an enduring issue. I don't talk about it too much, but it's an enduring issue now that these characters have all turned into like warrior poets who like want to talk about like the nature of warfare and stuff like that. In earlier games, they were just like some guys, who were in something of a stressful situation, but now they're all like, Sun Tzu or something. But anyways,
I was under the impression for the longest time that Ghost was black.
Really? I mean, they never showed his face.
Yeah, and I was like, cool, because I'm part black. Obviously, Ahmed is very black. And I was like, hell yeah, like,
some representation.
Yeah, and then I was like, I saw like a picture where it was like Ghost without his mask, and it was just like this like jacked like bloke from
I
don't like London kind of dude. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there is an advantage to just never showing characters like that's face, because then you don't have to. You can just project yourself. Like there was the same thing with like Master Chief from Halo, right? Was like people were like, oh, I want to see his face, and it's like, oh, that's not as fun. It's easier to imagine yourself in these characters and things, but yeah, no, he's they actually show him in this game. The mask isn't a balaclava anymore. It's like a molded plastic thing, which is even more psychotic. And like he's got like charcoal. He's got like charcoal or like face paint like around his eyes, like not on his whole face, but like around the eye holes. So it looks. I don't know. It just seems like a lot of prep for someone who's going to be in a combat situation for a long time. But anyways, he's walking through a canyon by himself for no discernible reason. And he gets to this high ground, and it's to observe a meeting between, and we're going from fake countries to real countries here, between Russian PMCs, so Russian mercenaries, and the head of the IRGC Quds Force. So basically the head of the Iran Republican Guard, Revolutionary Guard Corps, their external branch that does most of Iran's external operations. So these two people are meeting in a third party country. The name of this general is General Gobrani. For those of you that don't know, this is generally the home of the Republic's more ideological hardliners compared to the rest of the Republic, I would say. Would you say that's a fair characterization, that sort of the IRGC are a lot more sort of, ideological as actors in the Iranian government?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And
you're more aligned with the clerics.
Yeah.
The Khomeini,
Yeah. And Iran obviously has separate intelligence agencies, but there's a lot of overlap. And so Quds Force in this context is the arm of Iran, and it's doing the military intelligence and the external action stuff for the purpose of this game, and also in real life a fair amount. So Laswell, right, the CIA station chief in charge of the last game for a totally different country. I guess now she just hangs around with the guys. She just hangs around with our heroes now, and she calls him up and just chilling. And she says that the Russians are there to supply Iran. And that what he's observing is an arms deal, which is very funny because Russia and Iran they don't share a border, but you can go directly from via the Caspian Sea from Iran to Russia. So there's no need for any of these actors to be in a third party country at all. Anyways, and we saw that with Iran supplying Russia recently in the war in Ukraine, where the supply lines were just via ships and things like that. So
to the Caspian.
Yeah. So you have observed this clandestine meeting, right? And so they decide to just strike the site with a missile. Just fire a missile into a third party country. This is why I'm glad Ahmed didn't play, because just the look on your face when I say that. Yeah, they strike the site with a missile. They kill everyone. They don't explain why this fictional Republic of Adal is chill with U.S. missiles just based in their territory and hitting third-party nationals, which is also a problem in prior games. I don't know if you guys remember this, but when this game came out, there's a lot of criticism that this is just a portrayal of the Soleimani strike in 2022, where the
That's
U.S.
what I was literally about to ask. Was like, okay,
and for those of you that don't know, that was where the U.S. killed the head of the Quds Force in Iraq. And I kind of see the controversy, but like, because I imagine that's where your question's going. But like, I don't know, I wasn't really offended by this. It's like, it's nowhere near as troublesome as the rest of the game, and it's totally different circumstances. Like, Soleimani was sort of in a convoy with Iraqi groups and things like that, and this seems to just be an illegal arms deal. But it was a touchy subject when it happened, and I was working for the government, nothing to do with Iran at the time, but there was a massive snowstorm the day that the Soleimani strike happened, and so everyone was like trying to get out of the office early to like beat this snowstorm, and basically it caused a massive traffic jam like outside of headquarters. And so basically we were like, this is a very high point of tensions between the US and Iran, and basically every single analyst is just sitting in a traffic jam like outside of a military base. And I was like, this is weird. But fortunately, there wasn't a massive war. Instead, we got COVID. But yeah, so that's all that happens in mission 1 is just they've killed a guy seemingly for very little gain and risked a lot. So that's international incident number 1. And so a few months later, right, they go into mission 2, and Laswell is visiting General Shepard at the Pentagon. And at least I think it's the Pentagon. There's kind of you see out his window. It's kind of weird. It's like he's kind of near DC, but not quite. But they're talking about Gorbrani's successor, right? The new head of Quds Force. His name is Hassan Zayani. And he wants revenge for the strike. And he's now in the Republic of Adal to meet the bad guys of the last game, Al-Qatala, who are sort of a stand-in for Al-Qaeda. But not religious and not ideological somehow. And that is kind of a funny thing that sort of they were portrayed as like anarchists in the last game, and now they're working with a very ideological group like the IRGC. But war makes strange bedfellows, I suppose. And Shepard and Laswell decide without any authorization that they're going to get him too. Like they're gonna also assassinate him since to be fair, I don't know how many IRGC guys are that interested in going to the country where their buddies just got. But anyways, so basically they figure, let's send Ghost, let's send Soap, and let's send MARSOC with them, the Marine Special Operations, to go grab him. And so I guess it's the worst conceived plan ever. The helicopter, they just fly everyone in several helicopters towards where they want to go. They drop them off, about a mile away from where all the bad guys are supposed to be. And the helicopters, instead of like turning around, they just fly forward for some reason towards where the bad guys are, and they just immediately get shot down. So this is already a disaster from a military perspective. But it's Call of Duty, so you still try and go and get the guy. And you clear out all these buildings where everyone has laptops open, and all the laptops are of Hassan Zayani. He's giving a speech in English, and it's just unhinged, shouting random stuff about the American experiment. Like, it's not really compelling, and it's not really how IRGC people tend to act. They don't tend to proselytize on YouTube videos for people. But anyways, and they don't really go into detail on this, but Al-Qatala really looks more like an Iraqi militia now. Like, they've got armored vehicles and uniforms and night vision goggles. Like, it's very much like they're going for like the Iraqi paramilitary vibe instead of the last game where it was more what we would traditionally think of as Al-Qaeda. And they sort of blame Hassan for this. Basically, they're like, yeah, Iran has armed these guys so well that now they're basically an army, which does not happen in the course of a year or two. But any case, you pursue Hassan, who's obviously, he's running away from this very obvious mission to capture him, and end up in this warehouse, which, quote, wasn't on the intel, which is a very weird way to phrase it and a very, very weird thing to say. Is this warehouse, I guess they didn't think, but anyways, they open one of this container and they're like, oh my God, all of this writing in this container is in English. And they discover the big sort of problem of the game, the big threat, which is that Hassan has American missiles. And I get why, and it's specifically the same kind of missile that comes out of a container box that they showed as killing Gorbrani earlier. And I get why this is a problem, but the game is acting like Iran doesn't have its own existing missile program, which is just very, very strange to me. Iran put a lot of effort into their missiles and their drones. So it's just weird to be like, now that they have an American one, they could be dangerous. So regardless, back in the Pentagon, General Shepard is like, oh, how did we miss that they have American missiles? And like, this is an intelligence failure. How do we find the rest of them? And, blah, blah, blah. We do have an article on intelligence failure, by the way. It doesn't list this one for some reason because it didn't happen. But, Laswell is like, don't worry, sir. I have a lead in Amsterdam. So she calls... Oh, yeah? She calls Captain Price, and she calls Gaz, and they go off to Amsterdam, which sounds like a lot better mission than going to the Republic of Adal, if you ask me.
This one I had written down in my notes specifically. I think we've mentioned it, and
briefly
in a past episode, but I guess you could probably speak to this, Ahmed, of course. But I just thought it was so absurd that these guys are on a tactical mission in the canals of Amsterdam, wearing like very obvious like tactical gear, and that there's this cell of guys that are all like armed up the wazoo that are just hanging out freely, like
in the middle of
I've
Amsterdam.
been to Amsterdam. It's like it's pretty like progressive, but it's not that progressive where you can just like you know.
That's not the kind of tolerant Amsterdam is.
Is there no-go zones there, Ahmed? Am I missing something?
No. There's no-go zone. I mean, obviously, I go back fairly often, but as far as I know, there's no-go zones. That's something, for some reason, that always is mentioned in US
Right.
media, but
the quote-unquote no-go zone.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I should have used a different term, because I think that's kind of a crazy one too, how those get brought up so often as like they're supposed to be this thing that.
But to be fair, I would say that the place where the game takes place is, we actually walked there, Mike.
Oh yeah, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh wow.
Are you guys part of Al-Qatala?
Yeah, I didn't realize I was so close
Don't
to
say
a
that.
terrorist camp in the city. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Is that like the mission portrays this area of Amsterdam like as a no-go zone, like as some kind of like hidden off the beaten path area, but it is the middle of Amsterdam. Like it is,
And like
It's
like
the most
you are-
posh. It's one of the most expensive and posh areas of Amsterdam.
Yeah, it is. It would be like, I don't know. It would be like if Times Square, if there was like a big deal between terrorists going down in Times Square.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
in terms
and
of the amount of people that are around and the eyes that are around.
And what are they like, paying off the local police to just not react to like a huge barrage of automatic fire? Like it doesn't. I don't understand. Like I just don't understand the mission. I get like they wanted, like it was stunning to like to see that level, like on a, I have a decent computer, and thankfully, and that level was insane. Like the detail, you're just like, whoa, like this is beautiful. But aesthetics aside, it was mental. Like, how do you even, I don't understand why they thought that was like even worth putting in there, other than like, let's find a way to shoehorn them into Amsterdam, but let's do it in the most like insane way possible.
Yeah, well, they were like, with a lot of these Call of Duty missions, it's like, oh, we want it to take place in a city. What does the city have? And for Amsterdam, they settled on water and red light district. So those are the two. So naturally, those are the two Amsterdam missions. Is those two areas. I mean, the craziest part about the whole thing is that I'm pretty sure the Dutch police and intelligence services would probably want to know about the like terrorist deal going down in the middle of Amsterdam. Like there is no reason to be like to hide this from the Dutch government. He'd probably take care of it for our heroes. But I guess you wouldn't want a Dutch protagonist. They're kind of strange.
Well, normally if something like this would happen, especially if it's an intelligence mission, there is permission that is asked to the host nation. And I mean, there are times it doesn't happen when it's something so covert, but this is something that people's lives are at risk. So it's close to impossible that the local authorities would not be warned.
Especially since a lot of people die in this mission. Like there's an outright people have suppressed weapons, but they're not that quiet. Like it would be like someone would notice this. So the mission is like they're looking for, Al-Qatala is apparently transferring missiles in Amsterdam, right? So they're going from boat to boat, and you're killing guards and stuff like that. You're throwing knives from inside the water, which is very impressive for a person in real life to do. But I guess it's no big thing for in video games. But they eventually they get on this one big suspicious boat that AQ has. And they're like, this boat's big enough. It could have a missile. It could have clues. So they shoot their way in, and they're like, what on earth? Like, these guys are speaking Spanish. And in my mind, I was like, oh, maybe they have like a connection to Spain, right? Spain could be a transit point for the missiles. But like instantly, Price is like, I know these guys work for a Mexican cartel because I identified this one guy's neck tattoo as we were going in. And he knows like what specific cartel they're based on. Like,
so good. Does the cartel even do that? Do they do like, I've never read any material about cartel using like, gang sign kind of relevant, like tagging up, like, you know, tattoos and stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, you wouldn't
seem
tattoo
more
the guy. You wouldn't tattoo the guy that you're sending abroad, right? The
Yeah,
guy
I
that you're
just
sending to go do a deal in Amsterdam would not be the one who's got the neck tattoos and the golden handled, gun and things like that. But your character picks up a phone, and it's like WhatsApp, and it's just like the most like simple Spanish ever. It's like they use Google Translate. It was like, "Have you spoken to the terrorists about our arms deal?" Like it's literally like that basic level of Spanish. And yeah, so the mission, so the plot of the game, you can kind of see it kind of coming together, right? The IRGC, the Iranian Quds Force guys, they want revenge on America for killing the boss, and now he's working with terrorists and he's working with Mexican cartels. And why the cartels would risk the massive amount of money they make from drugs by working with terrorists is a question that is not answered. I'm pretty sure cartels make a lot of money. They do not need Iranian money. But yeah, so instead of calling the Dutch police, like they should have done at the start and throughout this entire mission, they just kill all the narcos on the boat, and they find the insanely incriminating text messages, and they find out that there's going to be a meeting between the cartel guy and the Alcatala guy in a cafe in like 1 hour. So just sort of hard cuts to Captain Price, like in the cafe where the deal's going down, looking about as suspicious as someone could look. Like he's sitting 2 yards away from the bad guys, and he's like obviously talking in his earpiece. He's like, "There are narcos here, and also Iranians," and like, like it would be impossible to miss. It would be impossible to miss it. And he's also in like a skull cap and stuff as well. Like he's just the opposite of subtle. And Laswell, who's like I guess took like the fastest plane on Earth from DC to Amsterdam. Laswell's there and Gaz, and they decide that they're going to kidnap and render these two guys in broad daylight in the middle of the red light district, which, despite leading to an inevitable shootout and like hundreds of witnesses, and this game takes place I think in 2022, so everyone's got their phones out, right? They successfully kidnap the guy, and Laswell is like, "Good work," even though like this is literally an international incident that like they literally they have a shootout and they like throw the guy in the car and they like screech out still in the middle of Amsterdam, and they're like, "Yeah, we did it. Mission accomplished. No worries."
That would be close to impossible to do so.
Yeah.
The Dutch authorities would pick them up so fast.
Even beyond that, like you're talking about freely driving around the canals of Amsterdam. Like I remember trying to take a taxi in there.
Freely do.
Yeah, I remember when my wife and I took a taxi in, and the guy was like saying, "Oh, no one drives here." Like and like the roads were so tiny and like so congested.
It would have been more believable if they just put him in like
a bicycle.
On the back of a bicycle.
I was about to say like you knock him out and you put him on like a tandem bike. Oh, sorry, my friend's really drunk.
Stag party.
Yeah. Too much Indonesian food, but yeah. So, man, I miss Amsterdam. I need to go back to Amsterdam. It's so much fun. But our heroes figure out that the reason the cartel is involved is because the cartel is going to smuggle Zayani, the Quds Force guy, personally into the U.S. across the southern border, and like. This I don't know how to describe this. This is a long-standing anxiety in the States that terrorists and cartels are going to work together, or that insecurity at the border is going to lead to just terrorists entering that way. This is also the plot of Sicario 2, if you remember.
Yeah.
Usually, I mean, it's not really my biggest concern, because usually cartels want money, and dealing with terrorists just seems like a lot of risk for not as much reward. Which drugs sell themselves, right? You don't need to take contracts with random terrorists, but
you'll likely be designated as a terrorist organization.
Yeah,
which would put you in a world of hurt.
Yeah, it's basically an extra level of scrutiny for an organization that very much relies on not having a lot of scrutiny on them. But yeah, so Laswell calls a brand new character to the franchise named Alejandro, who is part of a Mexican Special Forces unit called Los Vaqueros, which is cowboys in English. And she tells him that he and his buddy Rodolfo, who is the only character in this entire game that I like, needs to stop Hassan Zayani because he's the only normal guy. Like everyone else is like talking like about the nature of war, and you don't understand the Middle East, you don't understand Mexico. And Rodolfo's like, yeah, I just drive the car. That's his whole deal. But basically, yeah, she tells Alejandro and Rodolfo that they need to stop Hassan Zayani from crossing the border, and that the FBI is like an hour away for some reason. So it's just them, and they have to get him before he crosses the border into the U.S. Because they don't have jurisdiction in the U.S. So for some reason, the entire U.S. security apparatus is nowhere near where this is happening, and it's just these two guys in a speedboat. So you and Alejandro, like, you go down the Rio Grande for like 10 seconds, and like just as you see him like just as he's jumping over the border, and Alejandro's like, we're gonna go after him, and Laswell's like, that's a bad idea, like and he's like, too bad. So you guys cross the border illegally and just start like fumbling around this like Texas trailer park looking for the terrorist and his cartel friends. Like they get over the border, and it's instantly like a trailer park kind of suburban kind of area. And for some reason, the cartel guys don't have a plan either, because you can hear random Texans yelling like, get out of my yard, and then getting shot by the cartel guys. Like they're supposed to be smuggling a terrorist secretly into the US, and they're just shooting the area up for no reason. It's actually nuts. This is actually probably the craziest mission in this game.
It's pretty unhinged.
And so you guys are pursuing them illegally. And as you're pursuing, other Texans like pop out and start demanding to know why you're in their yard with guns. And the game instructs you to de-escalate the situation by pointing your guns at them until they calm down, which is wild. It is unhinged.
It's a very universal thing to do.
Yeah, I know that when guns are pointed at me, I'm calm.
Well, it's one way to get calm.
Yeah, I mean, do you see what I mean about every mission being an international incident? Like if this actually happened, like people would lose their minds. But anyways. You keep chasing them through people's houses. You sort of go into a more suburban, housey area. And in one of the houses, like civilians draw guns on you and you shoot them, which you think, again, like massive international incident, but nobody ever follows up on this in the game. Like Alejandro's like, darn, I guess we had to shoot someone. even though he's illegally, he's like illegally doing all this. And then the local cops, Texas's finest, show up and arrest you. And the sheriff like throws some casual racism your way. He's like, it's just like out of nowhere, really. But it doesn't really matter because the cartel then attacks the cops while they're holding you and kill every single one of them except you and Rodolfo, which is very convenient for you. And eventually, the chase continues on foot, and Rodolfo catches up to Hassan Zayani, but Hassan knocks him out and then gives a bad guy speech and like ties him up and sets the building on fire. But that doesn't kill him. Alejandro saves him. And they figure out that Hassan is back in Mexico and moving something to the US. And it's not really clear to me why Hassan needed to sneak into America and then set a building on fire and then sneak right back out to set up a future cross-border shipment. It sort of just seems like he took on a lot of risk to accomplish very little. But maybe that's why I'm here and not in Mexico. I don't know. So now everyone from Task Force 141 and Rodolfo and Alejandro, everyone knows that Hassan is in Mexico. And Ghost and Soap get sent to meet Alejandro, and Alejandro has this like super secret. And so Ghost and Soap get sent to meet Alejandro at his super secret Mexican Special Forces base. And they do that Hollywood thing where they all drive through town together and they monologue about how like cartel violence in like a really superficial way. Right, they'll pass like an ice cream stand, and there'll be like sad children eating ice cream, and like the cartel guys will like smack it out of their hands and stuff. Like it's like I mean, it's cartel violence is a very serious topic, and they're just doing it like Hollywood does it. They put the Mexico filter on, everything's slightly more orange,
like Sicario.
Yeah, exactly like Sicario. Yeah. And in addition to Soap and Ghost, General Shepard sends alongside them contractors called Shadow Company to join them. So they're around as well in the background. I'm not going to be talking about them until they become more relevant, but just imagine like some contractor guys kind of backing them up. General Shepard says that Shadow Company has, quote, helpful rules of engagement, which is a very strange statement and not true since they're, again, illegally operating in Mexico. So there is no rules of engagement. There shouldn't be any engagement at all. But that's sort of where we're at. One of the more frustrating things about this game, even compared to the last ones, is they just skip over anything that touches on intelligence. Like they for instance, they somehow know that Hassan is in a safe house, but they don't explain why they know his exact location. And it's little things like that where there could have been a chance to talk about intelligence gathering, or even just show a visual that they just don't do. They skip right to it. So our heroes attack the town with the safe house, and when they reach it, he's not there, but they know that he was there. Actually, hold on, Michael. Do you remember why they know that he was there? Did you play that far in?
Oh yeah. I'm just trying to recollect because it was a bit ago now. No, it's not ringing a bell.
They walk into his office, and they're like, "Oh, here's a Quds Force flag."
Oh yeah.
They're like,
Yeah.
as if he's like, as if he's just pinning
How
up flags.
convenient.
Yeah, he's just pinning up Quds Force flags everywhere he goes. So the cartel are like inexplicably ride or die to protect Hassan. Like, even though dealing with him has caused like immediate and massive consequences, like all of a sudden, like Shadow Company is there and all these special forces guys are there to kill cartel guys because they've done this, they're still doing everything they can to protect him instead of telling him to go away, including literally calling in the Mexican army, who attack Soap and Ghost and Alejandro. So for big chunks of the missions in Mexico, you are fighting the official Mexican army. And the Mexican army is a problematic institution in a number of ways. Some, to a certain extent, they're not necessarily trusted for anti-cartel operations in all cases. But it's definitely not the case that they're just all lackeys of the El Sin Nombre cartel or whatever random cartel. It's more that they're kind of a inert force, I guess, is is sort of the accusation leveled against them a lot. But anyhow, they all run away from the army, right? And they pursue Hassan, who's still running away. Shadow Company somehow has an AC-130 in the air above them. Don't explain how they got that there. And the AC-130 kills like dozens of Mexican soldiers and like blows up like entire towns, basically, which is visually spectacular, but conceptually horrifying. So, like I said, every single mission in this game is some kind of international incident. But long story short, they get Hassan and drive him out to the desert for an interrogation. And actually, compared to the other games, this one has a lot less torture, I would say. I guess that the developers got a little bit squeamish about the protagonist torturing people. So Hassan is not tortured here. But the whole thing gets live streamed to Shepard and Laswell for some reason. Like, they're sitting in an office in DC, and they're just, and I guess they're just on Twitch, like streaming the confession or something.
I took a note on this part, I think, and I was kind of gonna ask about it. Like, wouldn't it be more I don't want to say realistic, because I know this isn't supposed to be like a realistic game, but like, if we're just trying to look at this, like, all right, like where's the, how are we comparing this to real life and as much as we can, or like how are we comparing this to just like history or whatever? It seems strange that Shepard, because he's not like, forgive me if I'm wrong, but he's not the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, correct?
No, he's like in charge of some like random program that doesn't exist.
So that's okay. That's good. So that's strange to me that he has that much like jurisdiction over these guys, to where like I would imagine at this level of like seriousness, there would be like a situation room thing and like the president and like
yeah,
like why is it him and this like CIA officer just like
everyone in this, and this isn't just this game, but everyone in this franchise has just an enormous amount of autonomy that just doesn't reflect what it's like working for a big institution. Like, Shepard has an enormous amount of autonomy as like the head of Task Force 141. He's even in charge of Laswell, even though Laswell is not part of the Department of Defense. She's CIA. So that wouldn't be how that relationship plays out. Captain Price can, I guess, just fly to any country he wants to. It is a constant issue throughout throughout these games that because they're so focused on sort of getting from one action set piece to another, everyone just has to know everything and do everything. Like how Laswell is just able to go to Amsterdam, right, out of nowhere. It's just stuff like that. So yeah, no, I totally agree. There would be significantly more oversight, significantly more permissions. And they do kind of make the point that Shepard is sort of going beyond what he should be doing. But in reality, you would be caught pretty quick if you were hiring, mercenaries to fight in Mexico. I think several other departments of the U.S. government might have some questions about that.
Sure.
But so they put Hassan in the desert and they sit him down. Hassan is saying stuff like, they got him in the desert, they're questioning him, and he's saying stuff like, I'm a Quds Force major, you have no right to detain me, which is the wrong thing to say when you're being interrogated, and particularly when you're presumably in Mexico illegally as well. And he also says a bunch of like pretentious stuff, right? They don't want to make an Iranian character in the Quds Force too like religious or too ideological. So he comes out with all this stuff about how like ancient Persia is the cradle of civilization, and like that makes them superior to America and stuff like that. And it's just really out of place. It doesn't reflect, like the developers they like say that they want to show how things are like gray and muddy, and like the morality of situations like this is disputed. But Hassan just comes off as entirely in the wrong here and kind of an unhinged person. So either they didn't mean that, or corporate told them they had to make sure we know that, we're the good guys. Despite the fact that they illegally shot their way through Mexico and the Mexican army to grab this guy, Laswell is like, killing him is an act of war. So their new plan, so they can't do that. They also can't render him for some reason back to the U.S. Even though, again, he's in Mexico illegally. He's actively tied to acts of terrorism. So their new plan is to just let him go and then see where he goes and follow him there, as if he would just like, oh, I'm free, time to get right back to being a villain. They
no tradecraft whatsoever.
No tradecraft. They're like obviously he would walk straight back into his illicit transfer of missiles to the U.S. And while they're before they do that though, they grab his phone, they exploit his phone, which is realistic, I guess. And it shows that when they caught him, he was calling someone at a fish hatchery in northern Spain. And so they go, this must be a narco fish hatchery, and the missiles must be in this fish hatchery. So much like in Amsterdam and Mexico, instead of calling the government of Spain to tell them about the narcos and terrorists that are smuggling drugs and missiles through their territory, they send Gaz and they send Captain Price to go check it out, I guess. Laswell is also there, and she's like in a boat, like off the coastline, but like still visible. Like you could still see her from the coast. She's just in a boat with like a sniper rifle and like binoculars, and she's like, I'll cover you guys, even though everyone can see everyone can see that she's there. And in the briefing, Laswell says, oh, we have imagery of this fish hatchery. And then instead of showing satellite imagery, they show like surveillance photos of the ground, which is kind of nitpicky, but there's so few intelligence topics to discuss in this. Imagery would generally mean that they took satellite photos. If they already have someone taking pictures of the fish hatchery, there's already somebody there. It's just an element that, I think one part of the team wasn't talking to another part of the team there, and on the developer side of the game, perhaps. But as per usual, despite this being a secret cartel facility, the cartels have dozens of guys with rifles and snipers, and the snipers they're facing into the facility instead of outside the facility. Like you sneak up from them on behind, even though you're coming from outside of the fish hatchery area. And so Gaz and Captain Price, they do the regular Call of Duty thing where they kill guys one by one, and they sneak in, and Gaz is like, oh, terrorists and narcos make strange bedfellows, which is true. And then Captain Price says, terrorists are about the past and narcos are about the future, which is a direct quote. And it's maybe, like, if you think about that for 10 seconds, it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Many terrorists are thinking about a future in their own terms, and most narcos I wouldn't really call visionaries. Like, they're visionaries in the context of like the drug trade, but they're not like, I will build a future where everyone's using cocaine. Like that's not usually That's not usually the idea. And that's the problem with making all these guys like warrior poets or whatever, is the writers don't actually have anything to say about these issues, really. They kind of just want to tell an action movie story. So you just end up with like meaningless statements like that. But, back to the mission, they shoot up the hatchery, and there's a lighthouse near the hatchery. And in yet another international incident, it turns out that in addition to the cartel guys being in this area, there are lots of AQ guys there who are, heavily armed and with like a crazy amount of weapons and arsenals, and they're smuggling all kinds of weapons. So not informing Spain about the armed extremists seems doubly irresponsible to me. But they also find crates in Cyrillic, right? Weapons crates with Cyrillic writing on it, and they immediately go, Russia is helping Hassan. Just based on that, like the state of Russia is assisting, the Iranians with smuggling weapons, which is quite the claim. A lot of weapons crates have Cyrillic on it, because Russian and post-Soviet and former Eastern Bloc states often, their weapons get around. So it's a bit of a presumption. But anyways, they find a narco submarine, which we do have an article on, plugging the site as always. But they find the narco submarine, but they don't find the missile. And then, a bunch of, I almost said Al-Qaeda there, Al-Qatala guys on boats figure out that maybe that one boat right off the coast of their secret base might be spying on them. So they go and they jump on the boat and they kidnap Laswell. And the way they sequence this is really confusing, because the next thing they show is like AQ live streaming holding her hostage in Urzikstan, even though they just kidnapped her like an hour earlier. And Price and Gaz are like still in the facility in Spain. So they're like watching the live stream on their phones of her being kidnapped like an 8-hour flight away. So it's just kind of nonsense. And Shepard says, General Shepard comes on, he says, don't go rescue her. And they tell him that they're going to do it anyway. And so they get Nikolai from the previous game, who's the Russian in the previous iteration of Call of Duty. He was like their ally / Russian soldier. And in this one, he's kind of a Russian freedom fighter of sorts. Flies them to Urzikstan, sort of off the books. And this goes into the sort of autonomy thing you mentioned earlier, Michael, that no one is beholden to anyone else in this game. And that entire mission is all just padding, and to remind us that Farah from the last game exists, and that you can buy her like character skin in multiplayer for $3.99. It's basically just an effort to sell merch and keep that environment for the multiplayer stuff. So I'm just going to skip it entirely because it doesn't really deal with much. Talk about the mission itself will give me an aneurysm. Did you play that one, Michael? It's the one where he's like hanging upside down from a rope and like shooting people while he's hanging upside down from a helicopter.
Yeah, is this like the huge chase scene?
Yeah, like they're he's like jumping from truck to truck.
I am terrible at video games, and that mission I had to repeat so many times because it was like one of those ones, I think it was further ahead on that one when you're like having to like drive and like dodge all the stuff coming at you while you're also catching up to them.
The terrorists are like chucking mines behind the truck. And then they're chucking drones at you. And it's like, I kept dying because I didn't realize how silly you could be, because you can just jump from every single truck perfectly to every other truck.
Oh, like in real life?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, it's basically like Uncharted or Indiana Jones. Like I was playing it and I was like, you guys really wanted to sell this as like the future of war or the present of war,
Gosh.
But yeah, I mean the long and short of it is it's basically a lot of chase that doesn't really get a lot done. They just get Laswell back at the end of it. And despite the fact that she was captured and therefore shouldn't know this, she was like, oh yeah, the guidance systems for the missiles were in Spain, but not the missiles themselves. And so even though Price and Gaz were just there, they probably did the search. But anyways, she says that only the leader of the cartel that we've been dealing with so far, called Sin Nombre, which is like person without a name or him without a name, or sort of nameless in English, knows where the missiles are. So Soap and Ghost and Alejandro, who are still in Mexico, despite murdering a lot of people, decide that they're going to capture Sin Nombre by having Soap walk into a cartel meeting compound and just offer him intelligence in exchange for a meeting. Like the idea, and I mean like literally, like just walking up as like a Scottish guy and being like, hey, I have secret intelligence I want to give you. Like it is that simple. Stupid and insane, but somehow it works. And the cartel take you to this like interrogation room where you meet a sicaria, not a sicario, named Valeria. And that's not too unrealistic. There have been a good number of female sicarias. Like La Flaca is one of the more prominent examples.
Yeah.
If you know her.
Very brutal.
Very brutal.
Oh,
Nasty way to go, for sure. But anyways, Valeria interrogates Soap, and they turn the interrogation into like a mini game. It's really dumb. But at the end of it, she's like, "You're telling the truth, unless you died." But she has to tell you you're telling the truth for you to progress. So she tells you that you're telling the truth. And she just lets you walk around the compound after that. You're just like a trusted guy after that. And you're supposed to be sneaky here, and you're supposed to sneak around and like get the secret intel and stuff. I'm on a deadline. I don't have time for that. So I kind of just shot everyone, which was a lot easier than it should have been.
Nice.
And so the twist is that Valeria, who you just met, is El Sin Nombre. So it's sort of a play off the fact that, in Spanish, right, the implication is that this is a guy, and then it turns out it's Valeria, who's a girl. So that's sort of the big twist, is that she's the big bad.
Bamboozled again.
And so our heroes capture and interrogate Valeria, and Alejandro is like, I know you, because she used to be Mexican Special Forces also, and then her and all of her Mexican Special Forces friends became narcos, which is kind of like Los Zetas, which is a real, actual, cartel. But it is sort of like they're speed running through like every single cartel issue in Mexico. They're just like, oh yeah, we know all this stuff. But so I've sort of brought up a couple times that it doesn't really make sense why a cartel would risk so much to help Hassan. And Valeria very helpfully explains why she did it. And brace yourselves for this one. She did it because if America is focused on the war on terror, it won't focus on the war on drugs.
I wrote that in my notes.
Did you? You wrote, yeah, because it's like, because she's helping.
Is it the quote? Yeah.
Because she's like helping terrorists. So she's bringing the cartel into the war on terror. She's not distracting the U.S. or the West generally. But like she's making herself the biggest problem. But anyway, so she's like, I'll give you the missile locations and Hassan if you leave Mexico alone and let me go. Even though like she's why they're there. She's why there's missiles in Mexico. She's why Hassan's in Mexico. No one was bothering Mexico until this happened. And now she's like, I'll stop doing the thing that I started doing if you guys. It's just nonsense. It's really like, even by Call of Duty standards, it's just a really bad take.
Big time. Is she like a single source of? So would that be like? I mean, I know it's hard to say, right? Because it's like you said, they're just blowing through the whole thing, all these plot lines. They're just trying to make it as like as Hollywood as they can. But obviously, we're here to dissect that a bit, and so in that spirit, it seems like she's a single source of intel. All right, would that be considered like they're kind of going off of what she solely is saying versus having like, I don't know why I had that in my notes as like
it is.
Like a question
she's
mark,
she's a single source of intel. She's obviously unreliable as a source.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
I think that for this particular case, because the next mission is this oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico. Basically, I guess she gives. Yeah, I know, right? She gives the intel that there's an oil rig, and presumably at that point, whatever intel people are involved, if any intel people are involved, are like at that point they're double checking, right? They're getting, presumably they're getting imagery of it. Presumably they might send some kind of ISR platform near it to check. So at that point, it's not like you're triangulating, you're validating your sources. Yeah. But they are super trustworthy, or super trusting, I should say, of Valeria, despite the fact that she just admitted to lying like 10 seconds earlier.
In a real situation, well, never mind. Never mind. I had a thought, but I kind of answered it in my own head. So I was gonna say that's kind of a resource heavy thing.
Yeah, I mean, in a real situation, all of these people would just be like they would just be rendered, right? Like maybe it would be like an El Chapo scenario where Valeria is handed over to the Mexican government, right? And then there's some kind of extradition process or something like that. But yeah, no, it's no, the circumstances are a little bit exceptional, shall we say. But yeah, so for some reason this time she's telling the truth. And there is actually a missile on this old oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico that's aimed at, America. And so they go attack it and they destroy the missile. The head of PMC Shadow Company is here for this. He's been around before. I just haven't talked about him. His name is Graves. He's kind of a he's kind of a non-entity. Yeah, Graves, right? I was going to say that he kind of reminds me of Eric Prince, but I looked up some interviews with Eric Prince after I beat the game, and I think he is literally just Eric Prince. Like, it's the same bearing, the same speech patterns, the same like weird, the same weird friendliness.
He's a bit more unprofessional, though, I would say.
That's true. Well, yeah, that's true.
The podcast I've heard with Eric Prince, he's like very like professional and like very like well spoken, and this guy was just a straight cowboy. Like it was cringe how much of like how his whole characterization was so like every stereotype of like an unhinged like PMC kind of like former spook kind of guy. Like his language was so dumb. Like the C-130 mission when he's like he's in the plane, he's just like saying the dumbest one-liners and the dumbest
he's literally in the C-130 with like all the contractors there, and he's like, those guys down there are your brothers, and they're all like, yes sir. It's just like it's just a weird, like, there are a lot of contractors in the US government, like not even just like in a military like PMC kind of way, just like the people that do logistics and stuff like that, and they just went straight for cowboy, and it makes sense given that like there's twists related to it later, but yeah, this idea that like that the game's supposed to be morally gray is like, no, this guy's like there's clearly something wrong with this guy. They all destroy the missile with the power of friendship, right? And after they do that, Graves immediately betrays them and decides that he's going to take Alejandro's base, like Alejandro's super secret Mexican Special Forces base that he was allowed, and says Shepard let him, and also that he threw all of Alejandro's guys in jail. So he took the initiative and detained like the entirety of the Mexican Special Forces, I guess. This doesn't go over well with Alejandro, obviously, since it's all of his guys. And they have a fight in which Alejandro's captured and Ghost and Soap flee in various states of injury. And you play as Soap here, and you're hiding in this like Mexican town. And the Shadow Company contractors, they're just walking like door to door, like shooting everyone and speaking like this is actually pretty realistic. It's like speaking like bad Spanish the way like Americans do, where they're like, "Donde está la Iranian?" They're like doing their like high school Spanish, like mixed in with English words when they don't know the Spanish word. An American staple. And then eventually there's like a lot of crap that happens here. Essentially, they're trying to introduce mechanics that matter in the multiplayer, right? Like crafting and things like that. But it's not really plot relevant. It's just kind of shoehorned in. And eventually,
this is about the point where I stopped. Was like, I'm dead serious. This is like I stopped like halfway through this mission. I was like, I'm not playing a crafting game in Call of Duty. This is so dumb.
You're like
tedious. It's just like
you make. What is it? It's you make stuff. You make like you use like a piece of metal and like rope to like pry open crates, and you use like make a Molotov cocktail, and you make like use a mousetrap and Semtex to make a bomb. It's just nonsense. Like
it's so
it's like
dumb.
Dora the
It's
Explorer.
Almost like those cutscenes where it's like something happens and it's like press B really quickly in order to like progress this cutscene. I'm just like it's just. I don't know. I get everyone's different. Everyone's got a different mind or a different, but it just it feels like one of those like, like that kind of carrotiness. Never mind. It's one of those like game mechanics, right? Where it's just like, why is this here other than to like, maybe there's like some psychological reason.
It's to sell the multiplayer because like later, because like when you play like Warzone or whatever, they like have those mechanics, which makes sense in a multiplayer game. But like,
does Warzone 2 have a crafting mechanic?
I think it does. I think it's got like in the Gulag and stuff like that. There's definitely like some elements of crafting that show up.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And I think that's what they were going for. But plot wise, it's just basically irrelevant. It's it's an opportunity for Ghost to say a bunch of more unhinged stuff, like, "Oh, I killed 8 men on the way here. Only needed to kill 7." It's like stuff like that, and it's like, it's just like, okay, weirdo.
Yeah.
But anyways, Soap and Ghost reunite, and they head to a safe house where Rodolfo was hiding the entire time, and they decide that Alejandro and the rest of the soldiers they have to be imprisoned, right, in this big abandoned prison occupied by Shadow Company. So their plan is to just go there and rescue them, just like the 3 of them against like 800 contractor guys. There's no real description of how big Shadow Company is supposed to be, but they just sort of seem like comically large, just like limitless amounts of guys, like crazy military hardware that that they somehow got to Mexico really quickly. And, at the end of this whole prison breakout sequence, right, Price and Gaz show up, and, they help rescue Alejandro and the rest of these, the rest of the vaqueros, the special forces guys, and say Laswell sent them after Shepard went dark. And I don't know what going dark means, because he's like an office worker, like he works in the Pentagon and he has an office. Like he's just an active duty officer. Like you can't really go dark in that context. Maybe he took a sick day. You know?
Mental health day.
Mental health. Well, after he might need a couple. He needs a lot of therapy for sure.
Yeah.
But Laswell explains the big twist of the game, which is that the reason why the Iranians have these American missiles in the first place is because Shepard has been secretly sending missiles to, quote, U.S. allies fighting Russia, with no real explanation what that means, and that the missiles were intercepted by a Russian PMC who then gave them to the Iranians. And then she says Shepard's intentions were good, which no, like like his intentions were to like illegally give a non-state actor missiles to hit Russia with, which wouldn't really help them on the ground, these like supposed partners, and doesn't really make any sense. There's lots of smaller other weapons that insurgencies like to have that are not massive ballistic missiles or cruise missiles. But like that's the plot of the game. The plot of the game is that there's a cover-up because Shepard lost some missiles, and everything we've been doing has been part of this like cover-up. And she was saying that 3 were lost, which means there's only 1 missile left, since they captured that 1 missile very early in the game and they destroyed that 2nd missile on the oil rig. So there's 1 rogue missile out there that's allegedly in the U.S. So, Price calls General Shepard, despite the fact that he went dark, calls General Shepard and says they need to find that last missile and that Shadow Company should stand down and let them talk to Valeria so they can find the last missile. And Shepard says no, and then they threaten each other with like super macho, like 80s movie threats on the phone. And long story short, our heroes are like, well, we've just attacked this like massive prison. Let's attack Shadow Company's base, the massive base that they built in Mexico over the last 3 days, where they're holding Valeria. And then we can ask her where the missiles are. So they attack the base and they kill Graves, right, after a boss battle that took me way more tries than I will admit on this podcast. He like jumps in a tank, and you have to like run around. You have to like grab things that kill tanks. You have to do it like 18 times. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah. And you kill like a comical amount of contractors. Like you probably saved the government like $1 billion in like contracts, like wages. Just for the sheer amount of contractors that die here. And so they kill all the contractors, they get to Valeria, and they ask her where the last missile is. And she's like, they're in Chicago. And then for some reason they decide to like honor the deal they have with her and let her go. Even though she's like threatening Alejandro and Rodolfo's families. She's like, I'm gonna find your families and kill them and stuff. And they're like, well, you're free to go because you helped us find this last missile. And it's like, nah, you could have kept you could have kept her in jail. That could have been fine. But anyways, everyone except Alejandro and Rodolfo go to Chicago, probably because Alejandro and Rodolfo are probably wanted in the U.S. at this rate for just sprinting in.
What you just said, it makes sense based on that quote. There's no real war on terror. If there's a war on drug, or if there there's a real war on
If everyone's focused on the war on terror, nobody's focused on the war on drugs. Was basically the paraphrase.
Yeah.
It's just it's just so weird. Like she loses basically like everything in her drug empire because of what she did, and she's like, no, but it's still better than like if we hadn't done anything at all. It's like, okay, you maniac. But yeah, so everyone goes to Chicago to stop the missile, except Alejandro and Rodolfo. They somehow know exactly where Hassan is at. Again, no real mention of like the intelligence that got them there or anything like that. And he's in a high-rise building in Chicago. And they decide that the only way they can save the day is not the like calling the 800 SWAT teams and soft teams between Mexico and Chicago. They could probably get there faster. Like, I think like Chicago alone, I looked this up. Chicago alone had 71 SWAT officers in 2021. So like there's a lot of people with a lot of guns between them and Chicago. And yeah, so in addition to just Hassan, he also has like 40 AQ terrorists with automatic weapons with him. So in addition to smuggling in the missile, the cartel also smuggled in like dozens of guys with like very heavy weapons, and nobody noticed, I guess, that this happened. And so, you know, they've taken hostages and stuff. You just shoot up this skyscraper. But Hassan launches the missile towards Washington, D.C., and the only way to stop it is to get his suitcase, which has the launch controls, instead of like warning anyone or like telling the U.S. government so that they can intercept it. And basically, he's running around the building with the suitcase like hot potato, and they're chasing him. And eventually, like Soap falls into an elevator shaft and just lands on top of him. And then it's sort of like a slapstick kind of bit where he just snatches the suitcase away and just sprints off. Like he's running through this high rise with like the nuclear disarmament, or not the nuclear, the missile disarmament suitcase, and like Hassan and two other guys are just chasing him. And you have to like run around and hide, and then like do a section of the disarmament and then run around and hide again. It's the same thing with the crafting that you were complaining about, Michael, in the other section, where you have to like, make a shiv out of like, a McDonald's wrapper and like a plastic spoon, and get the bad guys that way. But yeah, no one else comes to help you. So, once the missile is destroyed, like you successfully do it, you destroy the missile, and then they're like, oh, you're still in the building and there's still a lot of guys who want to kill you. So you have to do this like Home Alone thing with the traps and kill his bodyguards. And then Hassan knocks you out and says more unhinged. He says a bunch more unhinged stuff, like, we're not attacking America, we're invading America. And then he tries to throw like Soap out of a window, and then Ghost snipes him, which ends the whole crisis. Invasion over. Invasion solved. But yeah, that's the end of the crisis, right? That's the end of the substantive part of the plot. And then we get a bit of a wrap up. It just cuts to this like random bar in Chicago where the news is like saying that they're like a transformer exploded and damaged a skyscraper, which is like the worst cover up ever, because all you would have to do is look up and see like a bunch of gunshots, and like there was a point where the bad guy's like holding Soap like off of the building. So you could look up and be like, wow, that's a guy holding another guy off. That's a weird way to repair a transformer.
And yeah, and it's like 2022. There's absolutely no one that has any kind of devices that record things the moment that something strange starts happening. Like,
it's just I feel like they just need, like, people just want plots like this to end with it being a cover up. Like no one knows what we did, but like Price and Laswell, they're sitting in like a dive bar, and they're talking about how Shepard is off the grid now. And then they talk about how like the Russian PMC that stole the missiles in the first place are actually not just PMCs, but they're also ultra nationalists. And she's like, they're led by a new player, Makarov, who's the bad guy from, Modern Warfare 2 and 3. And, that's sort of a setup, right, for the next game. And it leads to this epilogue where someone's on a plane and they're like assembling a 3D printed gun on the plane. And they get a text message at the end that says no Russian. So they're calling back to, no Russian from Modern Warfare 2. And that's the setup for the next game. So then it ends. So yeah, that's all of Modern Warfare 2 2022. Everyone's plan was bad. And everyone's plan to stop everyone else's plan was bad. The craziest thing is like since then, there have been like a lot of Iranian sort of proxy attacks on U.S. bases and stuff. But none of those have been in the U.S. Those have all been against the U.S. presence in Syria and Iraq and Jordan. And it is funny that sort of Call of Duty thinks that the way that Iran would, damage the U.S. or pressure the U.S. would be to attack them in the U.S. and not to attack sort of the bases that are way more proximate to Iran and more proximate to their interests. But that might be me overanalyzing a video game for 12-year-olds.
It's still 12-year-old?
No, it's mature.
It's rated mature.
Well, I mean, who even pays attention these days?
It was such a big deal when GameStop stopped asking me if I was over 17 when I was buying video games. I was like, yes.
Oh man,
I don't need to bring my dad to buy.
Based on some of the voices I've heard in Call of Duty lobbies around the time this game came out, I would imagine that most of them are probably, they're very aggressive with their language.
I mean, somewhat. I don't know. I'm so desensitized to that at this point.
Yeah. Oh no, it's always fascinating to me. Like it's like the call. I that's why I can't stand Call of Duty. Honestly, like the multiplayer. I think it's fun, like for what it is, but like I just don't like the culture around it, and like just the weird like cringy things people say in lobbies and like in the game, and like just it's like this like cross between like hip hop culture and like edgelord culture and like and I'm just like, man, I'd rather play like Arma or something with my friends where it's just we're just goofing around, but it's like
it's less stressful. Or I mean Call of Duty's worse even than other sort of similar games. Like I was playing what's it called? I don't know if you heard about this game, BattleBit Remastered. It came out like
heard of it,
a while ago. It's basically just Battlefield, but it cost like $5 and it was like 5 gigabytes, and I was like, yes, this is what I want. But like, it's a totally different. It's like that's a totally different vibe. Battlefield's a totally different vibe. Like there's something special about Call of Duty. It's held up.
They need more like I've been playing Helldivers too, and like that game's great because the co-op. So people are just like, we're on the same team. We're like you get your ones and twos, but like everyone's kind of like for democracy, and it's just like there's no
because they're doing like well they're doing like what is it, Starship Troopers kind of deal there, right? Where it's like parody like parody nationalism and stuff. That's funny.
Even more unhinged. It's great.
Well that's the funny thing is that Call of Duty, they like their new skin, their new pack of multiplayer skins is like stuff from like Warhammer 40,000. And like Warhammer 40,000 also satirical, but I'm like, are Call of Duty players, is there an overlap? Like, do they think it's real? Like,
that's kind of too where I lost interest in the franchise. Like when just the absurd microtransactions. I mean, they had like Diablo 4 skins for Warzone, right? Like you could play like Lilith from Diablo 4. And I'm just like, this is insane. This whole thing is just I don't know. I don't want to get too into the weeds with like I'm big on like, okay, like why is this like the number one thing? Why is this such a huge franchise with all these studio? I mean, you see the credits and there's all these studios that are working on.
There's 3 separate developers that work on every game.
Yeah, and it's and then you see like it's like I don't know. I think it speaks something to the culture that that they produce it for, where there's this very I don't know, it's almost like it's turned into like a Fortnite kind of thing. Like when Warzone 1 came out, it was fun, it was fresh, it was like fun. There was like you can get your skin packs, but they weren't like cringy.
They were just like other operators and stuff. And now it's like you can be Spawn.
Not like Nicki Minaj.
You don't know this, Michael, but Lilith from Diablo 4 was actually an operator for the Increment, the secret SAS operator. No, she wasn't.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah.
We should do an article on that on the website.
She was a Siginter, and then she retired and decided to go be a Diablo 4 character.
Interesting. I bet her cubicle smelled like sulfur.
There is. Well, that's actually true for Siginters. Oh man, I might get some commenters comments for that. there is a game coming out called Gray Zone Warfare, and they like had this whole advertising campaign because they got like Sean McFate involved in it. He who wrote like a couple books on mercenaries and stuff, and it looks so like cringe. like it's like Gray Zone Warfare is when 3 mercenaries go to a random island and then are hunting for like magical artifacts or something. It's like there's like a zone with special resources in the middle of the island.
Whoa.
And the way each round, it's not out yet, so I don't know the full story, right? But you can play as one of 3 different PMCs. So it's like it's like the aesthetics of Gray Zone and Modern Warfare and stuff like that. But it's just put towards like some nonsense thing, like, shooting other PMCs on a random island.
This looks like I'm looking at the Steam page for it, and it looks like it's got like a Return from Tarkov like copycat.
It is, yeah, it's super Tarkov-y.
Like loot.
I didn't play that game, but yeah.
This is almost like what is it, that one game that came out recently that was like a huge scam the day before, like how they used a bunch of like, it was like the one where it was like this
Hunt Down the Freeman.
It was supposed to be like this AAA like MMO for like survival, like zombie, like Last of Us kind of game. And it was like people were raving about it, and no one like, there was no footage for the game like right before release. It was like oddly quiet, and the developers right before released like a statement. They're like, hey, just to let you know, like, this isn't a scam. We put our blood and sweat and tears into this, yada yada. And then it releases, and it's just, the whole game was made out of like Unreal assets or something like that, or Unity assets.
Like Unity assets or something.
But it's like not, it's literally like people did like research, kind of like, really elaborate like Reddit posts about it, where they were like finding all of the resource packs, and then the developers, like literally like a week, like less than a week later, the game was off the Steam store.
Man,
it doesn't, you can't get it anymore, and it's like it's a whole thing.
You can put your blood, sweat, and tears into a scam.
Yeah.
No one mentions that.
And they doubled down. They tripled down. They doubled down. They tripled down. And I don't know. It's these like 2 like shady like Singaporean like brothers who own the studio, and it's a whole thing.
If you project enough confidence, like, I think some people think that they can get out of anything with like enough confidence.
The trailer looked insane. The trailer looked absolutely insane. They made the trailer look like, whoa, like this is like the kind of game that a lot of people would probably play. And the hype train was insane for it. And then all of a sudden it's just like bamboozled again,
Wow. R.I.P. Rest in peace.
Yeah. But this looked like it could be one of those. I don't know.
I don't think this game,
probably not.
I don't think this game's a scam. I think they're going for the Arma audience though. Like like they're going for the people who played like Tarkov and the people who played 6 Days. Is it 6 Days to Fallujah? 6 Days of Fallujah? Like that kind of. I think they're going for that kind of crowd.
Or I guess it's like a small point, but I think what I mostly mean is like it seems like it's like a small studio using
small studio
asset flipping, using it's not like very
It's just not. It's also not very Gray Zone. I don't know. Like, it's just Gray Zone is when mercenaries. Like,
even the logo seems like it kind of copies like Call of Duty in a way.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. It's just hard not to be overshadowed by Call of Duty, because it's like it's among the best-selling games of the year every year for like the last 10 years.
Right.
It's up there with like FIFA and the sorts of enormous games.
But guys, I think we should wrap up.
Yeah, for sure.
If there's anything else, any of you guys working on something that's coming out soon that you want to share, maybe?
Well, in addition to the Gray Dynamics course, which we're working very hard to get out the door and give to everybody. We're very excited about that. I've recently been on a podcast by the Kyiv Independent talking about their use of drones, the oil facilities they've been blowing up. That came out an hour ago from when we're recording, but it'll be a little bit farther back when it finally gets released. But yeah, that's what I've been working on.
Nice.
Mike?
Got a couple ideas in the back burner right now. I've been actually researching a lot on the technical, because I feel like we have that piece on the Toyota wars, and I know a long time ago we talked about a reamp, so I was kind of trying to find a way to kind of refresh that one and make it a little bit more like to the current times.
Yeah, I think, weren't you not working on? Oh, were you not?
NSA
piece.
NSA, yeah, for sure. That one too.
An agency that does not appear in Call of Duty.
Yeah, and also maybe good to say that you're gonna be involved a lot more on topics around cyber.
Yeah,
correct.
That's yeah, kind of exploring that side. We have aerospace and some other like specialization kind of areas, but
there's some cool even for the course. We're speaking to other providers, other specializations that we are exploring, such as cryptocurrency intelligence and maritime intelligence. So that's long term. So that won't be anytime soon. But we're speaking with instructors that are at the top of their game. So yeah, we hope to include those after our courses are ready. So that's something. Anything you guys are reading or watching that you wanna share?
I just finished Anna Karenina, the Russian novel. It took me 6 months because I'm a slow reader, and it's 900 pages long. It didn't take me 6 months.
Yeah, I can imagine.
There was a break in the middle because I left my copy on a train, and then I had to buy a new copy. But it didn't have to be, but I wanted the same translation. So there was a gap in the middle where I was waiting for a new one. But right now I'm reading a book called The Black Count, which is about Alexandre Dumas, the author who wrote Three Musketeers. It's about his dad. And his dad was a prominent sort of soldier in the French Revolution under Napoleon, and he had all these crazy exploits, like, he was on a bridge and he had a sword, and there were a bunch of, enemy soldiers that couldn't cross the bridge because he was just waving it around by himself like a crazy person. So,
and he was black.
Just a lot.
Right?
He was. His dad was a French nobleman, and his mom was from Saint Domingue, so Haitian today. And so he was a very interesting figure in like that sort of story, which we think of as a very European, Napoleon and Wellington and all these guys. You also had this guy running around, being way cooler than all of them, in my opinion. But yeah, that's a good book.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna read that one soon. That's
highly recommend.
Good one. I've been back into mangas, so I'm reading Vagabond now. That's a classic one, and from the same author. He also did interestingly enough, he did a basketball manga called Slam Dunk, and
really cool.
It's awesome.
Yeah, you told me about that before. Yeah,
right. But the illustrations are pretty awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, shout out to Rico Inoue, I think that's his name. So yeah, he wrote and the Vagabond is like based on Musashi, real life wandering samurai. So it's pretty good.
Very cool.
And I'm watching. Sorry, go ahead.
Have you seen Shogun yet?
No, not yet. But I'm hearing it's great.
Yeah, it's good. I like it.
It's amazing. Yeah. And what is that? I'm watching also Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
How is it, the new one?
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's a bit like dark and slow, but and funny. So it's like dark humor, I guess. But yeah, it's pretty good. I like it. It's much more realistic than original it's based on.
Well, with Angelina Jolie. And Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
I think it was
based on
an
that.
even older one. Yeah. But
at least on the characters it's based, but it's much more realistic and gloomy. Yeah, it's pretty good. and the locations are amazing too. That they shoot in. Can recommend. All right, guys, thank you. I speak to you guys on Monday. So and to the people listening, I'll see you guys at the next podcast, and let us know what you think. I always say this, give us reviews and feedback, but you guys don't really do it, so please do so. So we know at least what you guys think and what we can improve. And see you in the next one. Thank you guys. Thank you, Marcel. Thank you, Michael.
Anytime.
Until the next time.